down and listen to records. Smell the cover, read all the verses. Tell me about your favorites on Vinyl and Vision.
Hey folks, thanks for tuning in to the latest episode of Vinyl and Vision. Here we are with episode 111, and today's very special guest is Paul Chastain. Some of you may know Paul as the primary singer and songwriter for the band Velvet Crush, a very popular band in the 90s that came from Rhode Island. But, you know, in this conversation, I kind of try to cover as much as I can about Paul's history, kind of growing up in Peoria, Illinois, to eventually moving out here to Providence, Rhode Island, and kind of the accidental way that they ended up ending up here in the city. Forming Velvet Crush, obviously playing with Matthew Sweet, eventually becoming part of his band. And right off the bat, Paul jumps right into a couple of stories that he shares about working with Ivan Julian in Matthew Sweet's band. Yeah, it was a great conversation. It was something I've really been looking forward to. Paul is one of those people who have been in a band from the Rhode Island area that has kind of had this mythical status to me, and I have just really been wanting to connect with them for a long time. So I'm very happy to be able to bring this conversation to you today. So Paul is currently working on a band called The Small Square. They have a new album out called Ours and Others, which is available on Farm to Label Records. So The Small Square is a really great band that is kind of like a two-piece. It's Paul and his partner John Richardson. So John Richardson has worked with like Tommy Keene and Gin Blossoms and Badfinger to name a few. So they're like really, accomplished and talented musicians, and so they're working together on this new project, and it's really great. I really encourage you to at least take a listen to the new album, if not make a purchase. I'll provide links to the Bandcamp and to Farm to Label Records, so that if you are interested in listening to it or purchasing it, you have both options there. And just FYI, folks, I'm going to take it slow for the remainder of the year. The holidays are coming very close. They're rearing their ugly head. I'm going to be focusing on just kind of like being here for the family for the holidays, and I'm going to take a break, and we're going to regroup for the new year, something I typically do. So you're not going to hear from me for a little while, but all the while I will be, updating the stuff on the Instagrams and the social medias and on YouTube. Probably put up some small clips for you just to catch up on some of that. And otherwise, I wish you all a happy holiday and a happy new year, and I'm looking forward to seeing you all again very soon. We thank you very much for all of your support, and all that we ask is that you do all the things you do with the internet, is what we say. Like, share, subscribe, comment, rate, review, all of those things. They all really help a lot. And if you care to help us out in a financial way, you can always make a purchase through our website, psychicstatic.net. Anything on that goes towards funding the show, and we do really appreciate it. Thank you very much, folks. Enjoy.
Hello, Paul. Paul Chastain.
Hey, is it James?
Yeah. Hey, how are
How's
you?
it going, man? Yeah, I was just listening to you a second ago, so it's weird to talk to you. I was listening to your cast you did with my old friend Ivan Julian.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was actually going to ask you about that because, you're the second person I would have spoken to that has played with Matthew Sweet.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, Ivan and I go way back, but I was happy to hear his new record and see that it had come out. And then I was just looking at your past cast to see what you've done, other things you've done, and I saw Ivan on that. Like, I got to check out Ivan.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. I knew most of that, but it's very interesting.
I bet you did. I mean, it's weird when it's bandmates and people that have worked together. Really an honor for me to get to speak with him. I mean, obviously he's, an iconic kind of guitar player, well-known, all the way back to the Voidoids. It's like he's like a legend, really, in some ways, or at least some people would consider him that,
Definitely. I mean, very influential, that band. And I think I don't know if he gets credit for it or not, but he certainly deserves credit for it because he was there, it's amazing. I'm amazed that I played with people like that, like that he's my friend, if I see him at a show, I'm like, hey, Ivan, how's it going? He remembers me, he knows me. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. How long did you guys play together?
Geez, I don't know. That time sort of all blurs together, but we did wow, we did probably two or three of Matthew's records together. He was probably there. See, I can't came and went in the early part. Rick Mank and I from Velvet Crush
Yeah.
were the rhythm section at a certain point, and then we got Velvet Crush stuff going on, so we left and we didn't tour for like two records, the two after Girlfriend, and then we came back. And I'm not sure when Ivan joined in, maybe before my time. My time began again. I don't remember, but then I played with him from that point forward until he left, and I never left. So
Yeah.
but it was quite some time. We spent some quality time in the back of the old Ford Econoline there. The last two rows were me and him.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. So that's very intimate then.
It kind of is, yeah. And I
Absolutely.
remember I have this great memory of we were somewhere, I want to say maybe in the Northwest somewhere, and we had like kind of a chill time, like a day off. We got there early that night, earlier the day before or something, which is unusual, but we got there. And I went to Ivan's little room, and all the rooms were sort of like apartment things that had like a kitchen and stuff, I think. That's what I remember.
Oh, okay.
And I remember going in there, and Ivan and I got some wine or something, and we're sitting there, and he's like, I want to play some. So he starts playing me stuff, and one of the things he played me was, he's like, yeah, you gotta check this out. And I'm pretty sure it was Muddy Waters, and he was just teaching me basically the groove thing, the groove factor, how this is like laid back, and how this is, how this feels, and all this stuff about feel. And I at the time I was thinking like, oh, it's really cool. And later I thought like, that's so fucking cool, to just have someone like that, like literally teaching me about that kind of a thing, which is a thing gained through like experience and extensive listening and study and stuff like that. And it was like,
Sure.
it blows my mind later on. At the time, it's just like, oh, that was fun to do, and it was really cool that, but wow, I have that sort of burned in my memory of a cool memory of Ivan.
Yeah.
He's a good dude, man, and a great player.
One
Love that guy.
amazing player. Yeah, I've seen, like, I watched his documentary, and like just watching what he would do on that, just like the little bit that you get to see, I was just like, Jesus, he's like just so like fluid and
Yeah.
just like understanding of the instrument. It's just like it's like nothing for him. It's like breathing.
It's sort of like nothing. Yeah, that's the sense. I remember one more Ivan story when we were on tour with Matthew. There's these back in the early days before the sort of internet was really everywhere. We were on tour, and our sound man Ronnie had this laptop, which was weird, and he was the only one in the group that had it, right? So I borrowed it from him one night, and I'm looking around online, and I found the operating manual and schematics that someone had posted for an LA2A compressor limiter, which is an old 60s, which people still like today, and they're worth thousands of dollars, So I found this guy had just posted from like 1963 or something like that time range, and I knew Ivan would be interested, so I called Ivan's room. I said, Ivan, I got this thing to show you. He said, come on over. So I showed him, I showed him these schematics, and he was like, what? I can build this. I can build this. It's like, yeah, that's cool. You should do that. It's like, no, now we can build it now, like starting now. I'm like, what?
Oh my God.
So from that point forward on the tour, because we weren't very far along in the tour yet, he and I would go, and usually there was like a runner, they call it a runner dispatched with the band that would sort of like go, help you get stuff if you need like batteries, you needed something from outside the venue. And so we usually had a runner. So we would get the runner to take us to like old, we would find like old radio, like ham radio shops and guys like this that have all these old parts laying around that Ivan knew about somehow. He knew that would be the place. So we went around and we sourced parts, and I was in charge of sort of the aesthetics of it. He said, I don't care what it looks like. I'll build it in a shoebox. I don't care. I just want it to work and be a thing. It's like, okay, well, I want it to look cool, so I'll help with that.
Okay.
But anyway, he did build it, and I have it. I have the thing he built, the prototype, and he went on to build several of them and sold them to people he knew in New York studios that he had worked in and stuff. He would build a pair of them because they're mono units.
Yeah.
So they're a photo optical type compressor. So they're no, they're really cool. And at that time, not a lot of people actually made them. Like now, people like make a lot of sort of versions of them. But he was hand making them and sourcing the parts. He wanted old transformers, you know, like new old stock things, and it was really hard, I think, and hand wiring everything. So, but he made it on tour in the bus, like, so, you know, soldering. You'd see smoke coming out of his bunk. There's solder. He'd be in the dressing room, you know, drilling something or soldering something or all this crazy stuff. It was very, Ivan, but it worked and it's great.
That's amazing.
He's a genius.
I love that ability. I love what people that have that ability, because it's just like I can look at a schematic and it just looks like Chinese to me. Like I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know what
I mean, I kind of know what it means, but I can't do something like that. You know, I can't like he fixes amps and stuff like, you know, he can do all that stuff because he's the real deal. He can do it all.
Right. That's amazing.
Well, sorry for that little side trip there, but I was
that's great.
Thinking about Ivan.
Yeah, no, I bet. I mean, thanks for bringing it up. I mean, like, you know, that was a great conversation. But, you know, speaking of you, you know that I'm in Rhode Island, right?
Well, I didn't know that until I was listening to the podcast with Ivan, and then I was going to ask you about that. Where are you in Providence?
No, I'm in West Warwick.
West Warwick, okay. West Warwick.
You probably never spent any time in West Warwick.
Well, no, but I've been through for sure because I lived there for about 10 years, you know.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm surprised we have never met.
It is odd. Well, my time was basically the entire 90s, and then I moved out in around 2000, 2001 or 2000, I think. So, but I lived in Providence most of the time, and then later I lived in Narragansett.
Oh, okay, cool.
For a little while, yeah, which was very pleasant down there. But yeah, that's where Velvet Crush, my band, formed. Even though the principal members were all from the Midwest, we all went to Rhode Island. We knew Jeffrey, who became our guitar player, Jeffrey Underhill, had lived out there, and we sort of connected with him and said, hey, we're coming to the East. Rick Menk and I said, we're moving to the East Coast. And we didn't really have much of a plan. We had a little bit of a plan, which fell through. So he said, well, I know this guy, Jeffrey. So I'm going to call him. So he called Jeffrey, who lived somewhere like over on Dorrance Street or somewhere like that. And he said, yeah, come on out and you can crash at the place I live and until you get your thing figured out, what you want to do or whatever. And so we said, okay, we're coming. So we did. And then a little while later, Jeffrey became our guitarist when we got the combo happening. Okay, so yeah, Rhode Island is near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, I was hoping you'd say that because I mean I know that it's important. Obviously, it was the launching pad for Velvet Crush, which is kind of the band that you know, started it all for you. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, definitely. Yep, that's what Rick Menk and I had done some projects previously. He's from Barrington, Illinois, which is, you know, Chicago area, and I'm from Champaign, Illinois, and so we kind of hooked up through this producer who had done Rick had a band called the Reverbs, and I heard these recordings, and it's kind of at the end of my sort of first band that I had, which was called Nines. We were like a new wave band, and I was kind of coming out of that, and I had some songs I wanted to record, and some mutual friends said, hey, have you heard this Reverbs record? They did it like in Schaumburg, Illinois. I was like, what? And so I called this guy, Michael Freeman, who was the engineer and producer of it. And he said, yeah, you got to meet my friend Rick. After I talked to him, you know, he's like, you got to meet my friend Rick. You guys are like saying the same stuff. You got to talk. Yeah. You got to meet Rick.
Oh, that's cool.
And so I did meet Rick, and I did go and record with Michael, and I did some solo things there, which became part of my first EP that I ever released. But that started my relationship with Rick, which is still ongoing to this point forward. So he was my creative partner.
Right.
And let's see, where were we? He lived in Champaign for a while, and we kind of had little things where we did recordings and released singles, and kind of had a little live stuff going on once in a while with various incarnations. But then at one point we said, we got to get out of here. We can't, you know, it's so hard to like do shows and stuff anywhere. It's so far apart.
Right.
You know, like it's 2.5 hours to Chicago from Champaign, and it's about the same as St. Louis. And then after that, you're like, well, the next town is quite far, if to any place that you'd really play.
Right.
And we thought, East Coast, you can play all over the place, and fairly easily, and you can go to like Boston area or there. And so we ended up in Providence, which was much cheaper than Boston, and we did play all over the East Coast. It was easy to do. We ended up playing a lot in New York, which was really probably a really good thing.
Yeah.
And then, all over Philly and DC and up and down I-95 there.
It's all pretty tight over here. It's pretty great.
Yeah, and Providence at that time, not a lot was going on. There were some bands and stuff, but there wasn't really much of a scene, and it was pretty quiet. But it was it was a good place to kind of start because of that, I think. And so we got Jeffrey to join, and then we just had a rehearsal space that was in this like food storage area. It's down by like where Joanne's Silvertop. Do you know where that diner was?
Was it the Vinci building?
I don't think it was that building, but it was down in that area. There's like food warehouse.
Yeah, that building got tore down recently, unfortunately.
Oh no.
Yeah.
But, so we had a little space that we rented out, which was in this building that was basically just filled with potatoes.
Okay.
Like these giant things of potatoes. And anyway, they rented the space. That wasn't like somebody rented it for an office, and we converted it into like just a little jamming space, and that became our rehearsal space. And we spent a real lot of time in there, working on our stuff. So it was great. And we love Providence. We all feel very fond of Providence.
Yeah. Well, look, I have a couple of things I want to ask you about that. I mean, considering we're kind of starting right there in the conversation, we're going to be talking about the dB's, stands for Decibels. That's the album you chose. So I picked up Chris Stamey's book, A Spy in the House of Loud.
I didn't have that. Oh, great. Yeah.
Yeah, I picked it up to try to find out more about this album because it's I guess it's fair to say that it's a iconic record at this point. It definitely has some it's got this classicness to it. It's obviously well known amongst like music fans.
It certainly is iconic to me, and I got to say, I was looking for songs and albums and stuff to talk about for other podcasts and stuff, and I had kind of I haven't really heard this record before right now, for a long time. But once I started thinking about it, I was like, oh my God, like that's a huge.
Yeah.
I was trying to think of things that were really influential at the time, and I thought of some other things that certainly were, that are kind of related to this whole thing. But I remember that this record and the next one, Repercussion, they were just so. It's got a classic thing to it, and I feel like now, even listening, it doesn't sound really very dated to me. It sounds just weird and cool, like it always did, and it sounds like guys operating on a whole different plane of creativity and existence. And it made me inspired, and it made me like curious about what they were hearing or listening to, and all that stuff. And then. Just like everything about it is so cool. The songs, songwriting, great. Just the ideas in the recording, the little bits of stuff and all that. It's so awesome. It's like a perfect record, And I don't know if people think that. I know there's some people that do, but I don't really know what people think about the record. But it seems to be not available like in the
format
streaming world. Yeah, which is just a crime. Like, what's up with that?
I don't know, man. You can find it on YouTube if you really need to listen to it.
That's where I was finding it, but like, because I don't know where my copy is, from long ago. But God, it should be out there, because it's really, and you can hear that it influenced just like hundreds of bands and artists.
Tons. Yeah. That's the I think probably the biggest thing about this album is that it's a very influential record. I mean, obviously it did a number on you.
Deservedly so.
Yeah. So first of all, speaking about like going back to what we were saying about Ivan Julian, I consider an honor to speak with him, and because he's kind of got this legendary status. I think the same of you. Like, I really wanted to talk with you because I mean, we're if you being from Rhode Island, especially in the 90s, there's certainly like this mystique I have. Because I'm like, I was like too young in the 90s that I didn't really get out to go to the shows, unfortunately. But I remember like looking at the Phoenix and
Oh yeah,
like
the feet.
seeing all the listings, and I was just like seeing all the band names. I was like, oh man, I wish I could fucking go to that show. It sounds like I don't know who those bands are, but I want to see these bands.
Yeah, right.
And so I think that your history with Velvet Crush in the Providence music scene is definitely a memorable and lasting one.
Oh,
So
cool. Thank you for saying that.
no, absolutely. I mean, like I've been wanting to talk with somebody from Velvet Crush for a long time now. I just didn't know where to go. I didn't know how to find you guys really. So
Well, sorry about that. Yeah, we're pretty good at kind of self-sabotaging or anything having to do with our career, but well, I'm happy to be speaking with you, and maybe we can release some Velvet Crush music in the near future. We just released the 30th anniversary of Teenage Symphony Sagad record,
oh yeah.
and last month we were in Spain doing a tour to kind of promote that, and just to because we hadn't done that in quite a long time, so we did a tour in Spain, which was great. And we had our old friend, another band that you probably would know, this guy Dave Gibbs from the band Gigolo Ounce, who
Oh
are
yeah.
from Boston.
Yep.
He used to do shows with us, play quite often, but he was the lead singer and guitarist from that band. But we used to borrow him and do. We always like to do 4-piece things when we did like a tour. Like
Mhm.
we would play 3-piece a lot just to go to up and down the East Coast. But when we started doing touring, we always had a fourth member, and Dave was one of our go-to guys. There were just a handful of guys, but Dave did quite a lot of shows with us. So he hadn't played with us in, since the mid '90s, and so we asked him if he'd do it, and he agreed, and it was really fun to get back with him and also get back with with Rick and Jeffrey and just do it. And but it was in a great atmosphere in Spain. The Spanish fans are sort of, I don't know, they're like the forever fans kind of thing, where they, well, we haven't made a record in 25 years or 30 years, and then they just will still come, it's
Right.
really amazing. And it's really from the heart, you feel like, with
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. Well, the
Much like
international crowds, right?
Japanese fans, I think. Yeah. And
Right. Right.
great. So it was a great place to go and do that. And so hopefully we will do some stuff in the future, and we can come and chat with you again.
That'd be great, man. I would really love that. But so speaking again about Providence, like, how you guys
Mhm.
moved from Illinois, like the cities in Illinois that you all respectively came from.
Right.
There's a point in this book where Chris Stamey is kind of speaking about thinking about making a living at music. Like he's kind of, realizing like this is my passion, this is something I want to do. But him and the rest of his band coming from like the Winston-Salem area of North Carolina, it's just like it's like a desert. It's like there's nothing there culturally for any of them to latch onto. So obviously he moves to New York City to make a go of trying to find a way into making music.
Right.
So I think that's a typical mindset of like many entertainers even today. I mean, so
Yeah. You got to go to the
just
coast.
yeah, well, coast or some major cities. I mean, I think maybe some people may have thought of Chicago as that. Maybe I'm not sure
Sure,
how it
yeah. And,
was at the time.
Nashville, and
Yep.
Austin fits that description. And
Yeah. There's these
I mean,
these areas, these like, bubbles of
where stuff seems to be happening, and you want to be part of that thing. I remember,
right.
When REM was first starting to happen, everybody wanted to go to Athens.
Right.
That was like, people were like, oh man, I think I'm gonna move to Athens. That was like, it seemed like, how could that not be cool? There's got to be a bunch of stuff going on there. So it was like that.
Right.
I remember that in the
Yeah.
beginning of it.
So is that how you felt about Providence? I mean, like, was Providence the destination, or was
It,
there
it
something
wasn't,
else?
it's kind of a sordid story, but Rick Mank he's like our sort of originally from the East area, from like New York somewhere, I think New York, upstate New York. But let's see, he has relatives in the kind of Boston area, and we were going to go and live at a house that was sort of owned by somebody in the family that wasn't really being used, and we were going to sort of be caretakers because we knew we didn't have any money or anything to begin with, so we really needed someplace to do a soft landing like that. I when I moved out, I took a bag of clothes and a guitar, literally. And like I sold these PA speakers, so I had like $400, and I took that and I took a flight on People's Express, which you may not even remember, but it was like some really cheap discount airline.
Yeah.
So we didn't have anything, and we were set to do this thing, and then did like 11th hour. Somebody in his extended family that was involved in that stuff objected to it, and so it put the kibosh on the whole thing. And so I was already, it was in motion already. I was like, I'm all but out the door, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think he might have been already out there, is what I remember, because he had been doing some stuff with Matthew Sweet early on. Anyway, so I said, well, I'm going to come out. So what can we do? And so they said, well, I'm going to call this guy, Jeffrey, who I know kind of, a little bit. And he lives in Providence, which I don't know anything about, but it's close to Boston and not too far from New York and stuff. So it just was sort of like that. It just happened like that because we knew Jeffrey, and Jeffrey lived there. And I don't know why. Actually, I don't know why Jeffrey was there. I don't really remember why he was already there, but he'd already lived there for a few years. Okay. And so he sort of knew stuff and people in the scene and all that. So it was really good that we hooked up with him. And then obviously he was a musician and became, part of our little plan, our plot.
Yeah. And what year was that?
That would have been like, I think we started in sort of like late 89.
Okay.
Sort of officially trying to kind of do it with Jeffrey. And so that means I probably moved out maybe a year before that or something.
All right. So it's on the cusp of the 90s.
Yeah, just before. And so we started working. I don't know when we started recording stuff, but I think we think the official, we cite this as 89. So I think, and my recollection is that it was kind of later 89. So somewhere in there. Yeah. Just on the cusp, as you said.
Yeah. So this is like kind of weird. Like, so you chose this record, and obviously you had to reach far back to kind of even consider this record. And the similarities between your life and what I've read about Chris Stamey and Peter Holzapfel are like almost mirrored.
Wow.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
I have that book. I got to get that.
Yeah, because you guys both moving from somewhere far away, trying to reach this destination to make a name for yourselves. Even when you signed your deal, Velvet Crush signed with Creation, right?
Right.
From the UK, and they signed with Albion, or Albion. I don't know how you pronounce that.
Yeah, Albion. Yeah, also from the UK. Yeah.
Right. And
that is weird.
kind of fall under the radar. It's like influential and important to a number of people. You had a good run, a good career, which obviously led you into the career that you're at currently, and that you're still kind of like living off of, and you have this back catalog that people still refer to. Like, you obviously you're celebrating your 30th anniversary of Teenage Symphonies for God, right?
Yep.
So I mean, yeah, it's just like you guys have this like very parallel kind of trajectory. It's kind of interesting.
I never thought of that, but that's cool. I mean, I'm in good company then, I guess.
Yeah. And also, I mean, like, have you ever met these guys? Like, have you ever worked with them or played with them?
You know what? It's weird because I know a lot of other people, or several other people in that same area, like the first and foremost Mitch Easter.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think I've ever really met any of the dB's. Sadly, okay. I don't think I have. I admire all of them, and I know Will, the drummer, played drums for Matthew for a while when Rick was away. One of the earlier, I think he came in quite early on because Matthew loved the dB's, and he's like, "Who can I get to play drums?" And it's like, "Oh, Will Rigby. I'm going to ask him."
Oh wow, okay. But that wasn't while you were in the band.
No. When I was in the band, it was just me and Rick. And I don't know. I don't think because we were always doing the same project together. So I was bass player and he was drummer. And then when I left, a couple of their bass players came in. Eventually, it kind of stayed on this guy, Tony Marsico, who became the bass player from that point forward. Then when I rejoined Matthew's thing in between Velvet Crush stuff, or after, we were kind of done with Teenage Symphonies, I played other stuff. I played guitar and I always sing with them, and but I played like extra guitar, and I played keyboards on tour, and just different stuff, just to kind of, I don't know. He let me be in the band, I guess, and then eventually Tony left, and I took over bass again. Once again, full circle.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Well, I mean, weirdly enough, close proximity, and unfortunately, kind of missing each other.
Yeah, I wish I still, well, there's still time to meet them,
Yeah.
but I would like to. I know, we worked with Velvet Crest worked with Mitch Easter on 2 records, and we spent considerable amount of time in Winston-Salem area. And I know Mitch still sees Chris, a lot, and is friends with him. And I don't know about the other guys or not, but I just never met him. I know, that Tim and Bobby from the Windbreakers, I worked with them. I know Don Dixon. I know, so many other guys that are in common with this, but I don't think I ever met these particular geniuses
So
from
weird.
down.
Yeah. Well, it'll eventually happen, I assume. It has to.
But yeah, I was, just listening to this like a couple of weeks ago, this record, well, just looking at the titles, I was like, oh yeah, I know the songs. I know every song, pretty well, but even though I haven't heard it for a really long time. And then I started playing them,
Yeah.
at that point. And that's when I decided I had to choose this for the record, for the one to talk about. I was like, oh God, this one. And it just brings back all these memories and all these thoughts about when I was just trying to formulate how to do stuff and what I wanted to do. And then this stuff really spoke to me. I was like, how can you make music like this? I want to make music like that. What do you, it's like, I'm so naive and green, and it's like, it's so mysterious. And like, I can't understand how. It's like the same feeling like when I first, even before this, heard like a Beatles record or something like that, where you're like, how can they even think of this? Like, how, like that's,
Right.
I have this feeling about this record. It's like, how can they think of these things? These are so great. All the little production bits and stuff, which maybe I appreciate more now than I did then, but I just loved everything kind of about it. And in a way, it sort of led me to that area, and to Mitch, and who Rick also loved all that music and stuff. And so when it came time for Velvet Crest to decide to put forth the ideas for a producer for the record to the label, and we said we'd love for Mitch Easter to do it, and so they agreed. But it was sort of an easy decision, because it was easy for us to go to that place somehow, both of us,
Right.
and then we actually ran into Mitch in England. We were over there doing something, touring, I think, and he was there working with this band called Moose. And he was listening to them. We were at a rehearsal space in London. And he was there, listening to them rehearse, because they were getting ready they were doing like pre-production or something. And he was in the building, and Rick comes out and goes, "Oh, I think I just saw Mitch." I was like, Mitch Easter? What? He's like, yeah, I think it's him. He's here. Like, what? What the fuck? Why is Mitch Easter? That's crazy.
Right.
Because, we had been thinking about like this kind of stuff, like what are we going to do when we make a record and all this. And he was there. It was crazy. It was a nutty thing, of all the places, of all the gin joints, And so we talked to him for a little bit, and he actually, I think he came to a show that we did. And it was really cool. And he sort of, I think, preliminarily agreed to do, if we could get him on the list, he would, if we could submit his name and stuff. And he said, yeah. So it was a really weird coincidence, but seemed like, it was the cosmic decision that was already made somehow, that we would work with him.
Yeah, that's great.
But all that, through, Let's Active, the dB's and REM and all these things that sort of all conspired, I think, in our subconscious to think that one way to make a great record would be to go to that place with those people and,
right.
and do that stuff. So we did, when we did the basic tracks for Teenage Symphonies, we recorded. We didn't really need to do this, but we went to this place called Reflection in Charlotte, where Mitch had worked with REM, and did some stuff there with him in a different studio. And then we came back to Mitch's Drive-In, which was his original studio that he had at that time, which was at his parents' house, which was pretty funny and fun.
Yeah.
Now he's got a new place, not new, but he has got his own place at his house. But at that point, that was the classic one where those records were made, and we'd see the credits like recorded at the drive-in. Like, yeah, we got to go there. Like,
Yeah, that's
So
awesome.
yeah,
That's so great.
hmm
Hey, so
Anyway,
so tell me, I want to get into your early history too for a little bit.
okay.
So you were saying you grew up in Illinois, in which city?
Champaign, Illinois. It's where the University of Illinois is.
Okay, and that's where you were like
However,
born and raised?
well, I was born in Kansas City, Missouri, but
Oh,
or Missouri, as I'm allowed to say because I'm from there. But Kansas City, Missouri. But I moved to Illinois, to like Peoria area, when I was like maybe second grade or something, and then we lived there for a couple of years, and then we moved to Champaign for my dad's work.
mhm.
And then I grew up. So I basically grew up in Champaign.
Yeah. Okay. And so what was music in the house like growing up?
Music in the house. Well, I don't remember a ton of music from my parents. My mom actually played guitar when she was a kid, and so she still kind of played once in a while. When we went to see my grandpa and stuff like that, she would play guitar. But I have an older brother who's 6 years older than me, so he is probably mostly responsible for exposing me to music. The older
Okay.
brother. So when I was younger, I would hear stuff that he had gotten. So I heard Beatles stuff, and we had Monkeys singles, stuff like that from him. It's like, oh, this
Okay.
is great. So I loved those things. And he also played trumpet, like in the band, and which I followed in his footsteps and did that too. So I would hear other kinds of music like that around, like Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass, one of my favorites. But I learned to play. Actually, I would play his horn. I'd sort of learned to play, but just on my own. I learned to kind of play by ear and to make the sound of it. So I decided I would play that later on as a result. But I would hear like a lot of, I think I was exposed to more sort of jazz stuff through his influence and as he got older, he was playing more music in school and stuff. And he started listening to stuff like jazz stuff, like, I don't know, like Count Basie stuff. And then on into like Maynard Ferguson, who's a trumpet guy and band leader guy and that kind of stuff. And so that all influenced me. And I do love, there's some jazz stuff that I do really love, but I think that there wasn't a lot of rock music kind of stuff going on apart from my older brother's singles that he would buy. And we did have some. I really remember the Monkey singles because he must have really liked them, because we had several, and they were on the Coal Gems label. It's like a little orange label. I can see it in my mind, and that probably influenced me. And then just the radio. We actually did listen to the radio back in that time. So
Sure. Yeah.
And there was all kinds of cool stuff on it. So
Yeah.
that was my early. Yeah.
So your mom was a guitter player. What about your dad? He didn't like music, or wasn't into music very much, or
He didn't play. He didn't play anything. He could really whistle really well. I remember that. he could do that crazy sort of like professional whistling, and I don't know why or how he could do that. But I don't think he really played an instrument too much growing up or anything like that. So it was mostly my mom. My mom's side of the family was musical. Her brother played a little, and in there, they lived out rural Missouri, and when they grew up, and people sort of entertained themselves in that time. So when we go to visit my grandfather at their house, there was like this old player piano that you could also play, and there's pictures of them playing guitars and stuff. So I think it was like the family jamboree. You'd sit around and play because there was no TV, and there was maybe there was a radio, but maybe not. And so it was that kind of playing, but they were more musical, my mom's side, I guess.
Okay. So then what was like your brother and your mother, I guess, but was that it as far as like kind of things that directed you towards getting into music? And because you must have kind of found your own way into like certain bands or groups or something at that time.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I just sort of liked it, and I like I said, I learned to play his horn, his trumpet from just kind of doing it. And then I was really interested in making sounds and things, and I could sort of play things like if I could go to somebody's house that had a piano, I would sit, and it was fascinating, and I could play little melody things. And then I started getting really fascinated with like harmonies, the way harmony worked and sounded, and like why is that? Why is it cool? Like,
Right.
And so that kind of stuff I was really into. And I sort of had an aptitude for playing. I could play different things kind of a little bit, you can pick it up and kind of make sense of it. And
Hmm.
so I started playing bass and got a guitar. Actually, I got a guitar first, I guess, and tried to play it. And then I started playing bass a little bit, but just because I like to kind of do it. And then as far as the sound of stuff, I got fascinated by just the how you make a song. It seemed just like some magical potion thing, magical conjuring. And then also, like I said, harmony stuff. So I started listening to, well, the Beatles had quite a lot of harmony, so that that was a great starting point. And then, but I remember being really fascinated with like Simon and Garfunkel, which I guess we had records of. Maybe my mother or my brother, one of them had records, and that was just two guys singing with a guitar.
Right.
And so I was like, wow. And I remember on one of the records, an early one, you could actually you could pan the thing hard left and you'd hear just Paul singing, and you could pan it hard right and you'd hear just Art singing.
Oh,
And
wow.
the coolest thing ever, so I'd turn off the main, because I know the melody, that's Paul's part. So I'm gonna sing just listen to Art and I'll try to sing with it. So it's like, that was really cool to me. It was sort of like doing almost like multi-track recording, like with singing with another voice. And
yeah. Oh, that's such
and
a
then
cool
I did
trick.
become fascinated with how to record it as well. So I started getting into trying to record stuff. And like I bought I bought a reel-to-reel tape recorder at a garage sale, and I remember trying to put material like tinfoil or something over the erase head of it, so I could multi-track, so I could do sound on sound with myself.
Oh, okay.
That didn't really work out, but the concept was sound, but it didn't really work out.
Right.
So I started liking doing that kind of stuff too, which I still do like to do that stuff. So
Okay.
which is why another reason maybe I was attracted to the dB's thing, because the production on this record is really awesome. There's all these like little quirky bits and just a sound that comes here and maybe it doesn't happen again, or just the choices they made. And
yeah,
it's just, like I said, like on another level, just on another plane,
absolutely.
somehow. And this
Yeah.
is their first thing that they did. So it's like,
Right.
the first as this group. So it's just mind blowing, really.
Yeah. Well, it seems like kind of like you, Chris Stamey had a lot of experience with the recording before he moved to New York. He was actually doing a lot of like recording in North Carolina, just like he has like a TAC, like 4-track, a cassette deck, I believe. So he was very into the idea of recording music, and kind of got some experience with the college he was going to, recording some bands locally, just kind of making some demos for them. So he was kind of already kind of like getting a feel for engineering, ultimately becoming a producer, ultimately,
Well, they definitely had a grasp on production ideas and stuff. I don't know the history of how they achieved the stuff or whatever, but both, maybe all four members, can do that. But this record, if you listen to just one song, you're like, oh my God, there's these things going on, and the way they structure the harmonies, and when the harmonies come in, and just everything about it, and all filtered through other cool stuff that they listen to, I'm sure, like, Big Star and things like that. And like, wow, just so many cool elements of it.
Yeah. So we'll probably try to get into some of that. We should probably go ahead and get into the record. I really wanted to ask you a lot about Providence, like for the time that you came in here, because like that's kind of an area that I'm interested in, just because I wasn't really active at that time.
Right.
But,
so you're from Providence?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Cranston, really. Okay. But I moved into Providence when I was 18, so that was like 98. So, I missed, like I said, I kind of missed all the era. Like I saw the names, I saw what was happening, but I didn't go. So, what did you feel about those bands at the time? Because early 90s, I'm assuming, along with Velvet Crush, aside from just, some of the pop type bands that were happening, who else was there that you remember?
Well, there was like Six Finger Satellite.
Yep.
The guitar player of which Pete Phillips played in Velvet Crush in the later stages of Velvet Crush there. When we made the record, Heavy Changes, he was in the band at that point, actually a member of the band.
Okay.
There was a band called Medicine Ball.
Oh, right.
kind of heavy stuff that was cool. And there was Backwash, I remember.
Oh, I just got their record.
Yeah. Uh, well, I'm
That
trying
was
to remember.
Pete Burr.
Pete Burr, right? Yep.
He passed away recently.
I heard that. Very sad. He was a good
Yeah,
guy.
I
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I
So
knew
those
him
guys
too.
were all around in the beginning of that, our time there. And we sort of all somehow congealed together and made a scene. There was really kind of a scene going on at one point. It wasn't
Yeah.
initially, but it became a scene. And there was this guy, Victor Brown, who owned this place called this hotel with a bar in it. It was called the Church House Inn. And he started to do have bands there. That was his goal, is to have bands. And so all the band, and so some of the in fact, several of the people in bands like worked at the bar with 10 bar, especially during the shows. And
Yeah.
he would do things to promote that sort of community, which was really helpful and cool. And I think that Teenage Fan Club played there, and maybe we played with them or something. I'm not sure, but that might have been when we met them. But I think
Okay.
they might have come and played at that club. So he would. That was very cool, because then all the musicians were actually in this one room.
Right.
Like a lot of the guys from the that were in bands and solo people and whatever from the scene would actually come to events like that, and you'd see them at other shows too, at Club Babyhead or the Rocket, as it was called, and Living Room and stuff. But it was cool to have that guy Victor sort of coalesce people together, and then even help out by, it's like, yeah, well, the drummer from Backwash tonight is your bartender or something. It'd be like that kind of a thing. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so it was pretty cool, and it made that, along with other things, made it kind of a cool little community. Which I don't know if it existed before we came there, but once we got there, it had started happening, I think, and with all the other bands, and it was pretty supportive. Everyone was really supportive of each other, I think, and
Yeah.
that was cool.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Yeah, it reminds me of like some of this stuff, thinking about like New York City in the mid to late 70s, like that kind of like new movement kind of starting to build. Because I mean, from what I can tell and what I remember, like, yeah, there was a pop there for a little bit, and then I don't know if like direction got like turned towards Boston or something, and then like Boston was the hot place for a while. New York was
Uh,
always there. New York was always there.
yeah.
It's always like the destination.
I can't remember. I mean, Boston always had its bands too. Oh, I know another band, Scarce, was another band from
Oh, right.
Providence that
Yeah,
we were
yeah.
friends with. Yeah, they were great. Yeah, I'm not sure, because at a certain point in the later '90s, we kind of weren't as local. Like after Teenage Symphonies, that was in the mid '90s. We ended up touring around, like, for like over a year off and on. We were playing in Europe and in the US a lot, and sort of everywhere in Japan. And then I felt like we were kind of less local. We still
Hmm.
did local shows occasionally, but so I don't know. I wasn't as plugged into what was going on in the scene at that moment, which Jeffrey or Rick might have been more aware of that. But I was kind of really I was really kind of hunkered down trying to like deal with. For me, it was like kind of hard to always have songs for the next thing and to work on that. And I didn't have a handle on doing that when we were on the road. And we really spent like a whole long time touring Teenage Symphonies. And it was, I couldn't write during that whole time. So
Right.
it was very difficult. And so when we weren't doing that, I really spent a lot of time in my own mind just trying to figure out, try to get some ideas together and get back to that. Cause it was a lot of work during the touring, and I wasn't able to kind of do both at the same time at that point. I didn't know how to handle it, I guess. So
Yeah, yeah. I can
I don't know
imagine it
what was
was
going on.
chaotic.
I don't know what
Yeah.
was going on around me as much. I'm kind of oblivious to a lot of the stuff that was going on around
Right.
from that point, kind of for a few years.
All right, cool. Well, that's fine. I mean, like, I don't want to like, beat that dead horse of like the Providence 90s scene either, but we're gonna try to tackle the record, the stands for
Okay.
decibels now, and I'm gonna ask you about your latest project, The Small Square, and your latest album, Ours and Others, through these songs.
Okay.
All right. So I unfortunately I'm gonna skip Black and White right off the bat because I couldn't figure anything out for it. Like it's
Okay.
a lot of these songs, like unfortunately, and I was like, like, so I'm listening to this album for the first time. Like, this is my introduction to it, and it's definitely a great record. I can definitely see a lot of like positive and like awesome aspects about it. But for the most part, lyrically, these songs are straightforward, you know?
Yeah.
And like that led me to think like, oh man, this is going to be a very personal conversation to have with Paul.
Well, I mean, I think some of the lyrics are straightforward. You know, the thing is that the two guys that writing, Peter Holzapfel, one writer, and Chris Stamey, the other writer.
Yeah.
Chris's songs are a little less straightforward, and I don't. You may not always, like the lyrics. They may not be complicated, but they're a little more.
Shrouded mystery.
Yeah, like just
Poetic
like
even.
abstract, a little more
Yeah.
abstract, and you get the meaning, but they're kind of shattered a little more because he was kind of more into that kind of stuff. And Peters are a little more right up front, like the fight and things like that. So I think there's both elements, which I also liked about. I like direct lyrics, but I also like not direct, not like literal things too. So that all appealed to me,
Yeah.
and still does.
For sure.
I'm kind of astounded at how many of the little things about these songs really stuck with me. Now looking at it 30 years later, I'm like,
Yeah, right.
wow, or even 40 years later, even so, it's pretty crazy. Actually, I'm kind of reeling from
shit.
it.
That's what I forgot to ask you. When did you find this record?
It must have been not long after this came out in like 81, I think.
Yeah,
Maybe
I think
so. It was probably
Yeah,
not too
January
long
81.
after that. I don't remember how I came to it exactly, but probably heard some on the radio here or there in Champaign at the college station WPGU. There was this guy by the name of John Ginoli who DJ'd there, and he's a guy who founded a band called the Pansy Division later on in life. But at that point, he was just a music enthusiast,
Okay.
and he would dig up these records and stuff from bands that I would never have found for quite a while. And he had a show on, which I used to listen to, and on his show he would play stuff like this. He would play these kind of things, and not all pop things, all different kind of stuff. But it would be like, what is this record? Like that kind of thing. So every
Right.
song would be like, what is this one? So quite possibly I heard it from there first. I don't remember specifically, but that would be exactly the kind of thing that he would play.
Okay.
And I'm sure he played it. So I would say, so probably, 81 or 82, I probably heard it.
Okay, cool. So let me see. Let's get into the next song, Dynamite.
Dynamite. So that's a Chris song.
Yep. So from Chris's book, A Spy in the House of Loud, he says about this song, quote, "There is no real narrative to the song's lyrics. I had seen a newspaper report about an IRA car bombing around that time. The catchphrase of comedian Jimmy J.J. Walker might have played into it too." And
Dynamite.
he goes on further to address a couple of other passages in the song, but ultimately say, quote, "I don't think it will reward much further scrutiny, but it's a good example of writing with a sound in mind." End quote.
Yeah. I don't really know what it's about. The lyrics don't really have like a story or anything like you said, but it does have a great sound, and the way he sang it like in a certain way. It's like he kind of swooped up to all the things, and the harmonies are all like that, and then just the arrangement of the song is really cool. It's got these stop parts where the drums just go in between the sections, and the drums have like a slapback echo on them. It's really cool. The whole just I think with this song, it's really like a sound that, like you said, actually that I kind of agree with that. It just kind of appeals to you on that level.
Right. Well, so
the melody's cool. The melody's cool, and the harmonies on it are cool.
Right. Yeah. But so I have to ask you, with that quote in mind, do you ever write with sound in mind?
Kind of. I mean, maybe not in the same way he was talking about, but like when a lot of times when I come up with a little idea, I hear something about it, right away, like how I want to do it eventually. If I ever finish the song, this is like a little bit or something, and I hear like, oh yeah, kind of this kind of a thing, or this should be, I want to play 12 string on this, or some kind of thing like that. It often happens, but I don't know. It seems like his was maybe more complete, like he had some kind of more complete vision. Mine are more like
Yeah.
fragmented. Like this, I have a piece of like, oh, I think this guitar thing should sound kind of like this. So I kind of do.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I think maybe like what he means by sound too is just like kind of the way, like maybe even lyrically sound, like how the words kind of like
oh yeah, so they all
work
kind of
off of
rhyme.
each other.
That. Yep,
Yeah,
yep,
they
yep.
rhyme, they kind of like flow together, like
Uh-huh.
especially with what you were saying, like the way that he kind of like they do the harmonies, or they kind of like pitch themselves up into the
Uh-huh.
songs. It's like
Yeah, so I see what you mean. So he was talking about that as the sound of words,
yeah,
probably. So well, yeah, because they all kind of rhyme with dynamite. So maybe that's why there's no
right,
real literal meaning, because they just kind of have to end with the I sound.
right,
But
yeah,
the track does have a cool sound to it. It's got, like I said, the echo
yeah,
kind of thing in the
and
drums, which is really, it's really kind of like really
right.
clattery. It's
Yeah,
cool.
and I'll tell you, this book it really actually kind of reads like a fucking like a schematic almost. Like it
I
reads like
gotta
a
get
textbook, because he goes into a lot of detail about like some of the recording process and some of like the things that they were trying and doing at the time, which
oh
I'm just
cool.
like, this is an engineer's dream. Like I respect it. I like it. I think it's interesting, but like it's a little dry.
Right. Sounds like I would like it. I gotta get that.
Okay. Yeah, go for it, man. I mean, it's good. It's a good read, but you know, it's just like it's meaty. It's dense.
Almost technical, right?
Yeah, yeah, very, very. All right, well, let's move on to the next song. She's Not Worried.
She's Not Worried. I think that's another Chris song, maybe.
Yep, it is.
I just liked, yeah, I like the sentiment of the song. And I like the sound. The overall sound of it is cool. Yeah, just saying like, don't, she's not worrying about it now. I'm not worrying about it now. It's cool. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not a huge, heavy meaning or anything, but
Hmm.
a lot of the songs have this kind of quality where they're just sort of effortlessly, born into the world. And this, I think this kind of it feels like a song that has been around for a long time, but they
Yeah.
made it up, right? You know what I mean? It has a
Right.
familiarity and an
Well,
ease to it. The whole
y-
record kind of flows like that to me.
yeah. Do you think that that has anything to do with like, because my immediate impression from hearing this song was that it sounds like a Zombies tribute. Like there's some elements in it that definitely catch me. That I'm just like, this kind of sounds almost exactly like a part of a zombie song.
It kind of does, yeah. I didn't think of that, but I'm sure they must have loved Odyssey and Oracle, like
Yep.
all of us do.
Yes,
Um,
that's true.
yeah, could be. I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure where all their influences. They're kind of all smushed together. But that's interesting. That's a
Yeah.
very astute of you there, James.
Well, yeah. I mean, and it's just like, inspiration and like inspiration for writing comes from all places, and it's not like I'm saying that he maybe directly grabbed it from the Zombies, but it's just it leaks in, right? It kind of seeps into your mind, and
Right, which is I think the
eventually,
way it's kind of the way it works with songwriters. I think people don't usually anyway think of like, I'm going to use this thing from this song. Sometimes you do that, but like
yeah,
usually it's like it's just part of your makeup that
subconscious, yeah,
you're building blocks. And so this sounds cool to you. Why? Well, maybe because it's like a zombies thing,
right,
but you don't
right,
think of that when you're doing it, so later on you
of
go, oh,
course.
maybe I did, like
Well,
maybe that's
let me bring this to your attention then. I mean, like, so I was listening to your new record, and I was just like, I think I heard something similar on your new record, Hours and Theirs, with your song "The Hourglass," where I was just like, oh, there's something Beatlesque here. There's something very, very Beatles
yeah.
here.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that song. That's one, like usually when I make a song, it like takes a while for me to get it from beginning to end, either the lyrics or hold me up or there's something about it. But for some reason that song, I kind of wrote it all kind of together. I had the idea for it. And then what happened with it was later in the studio when I brought it into John, we kind of pulled it apart, like deconstructed, and then put it back together. And we were talking about doing dry drums and these kind of things like that. So the way we did it was different from like all the other songs on the record, I think. But that song, I don't really know. It's one of those where I don't know what the source thing was. I don't know where I got the riff from or anything. It's just like all of a sudden I kind of had most of that idea, you know what I mean? Which is
Yeah.
rare for me. So I'm not sure. You would be a better better judge of where it came from than I would. I don't know.
Well, I mean that was just
You're
something
hearing
that
something in it. That's probably what it is. Like, you know.
Yeah, but it's not like you took it directly. But it's definitely it definitely has this Beatlesque like vibe to it.
Cool. I'll take
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, no, it's a great song.
Thank you.
So let's move on to the next song, The Fight.
Yeah, this is Peter's song, which is so like I was saying, he's kind of more direct
Right.
songs, more sort of not normal, but more like
Straightforward, direct.
straightforward. Yeah. And it's just kind of like that. And it's about obviously having a fight with your significant other there. And
yeah. And it's very it's a little awkward because it's just like this is like very honest, you know?
Yeah, it's just like an honest thing. Yeah. I mean, it is what you think it is, basically. But again, the overall sound of the production stuff they did is really cool. It sounds cool.
Right.
It sounds aggravated and but like it's still really poppy and I don't know, just well put together. Yeah.
You know, oddly enough, Peter Holzapfel has said that this song and Ask for Jill were two of their most requested songs.
Wow. Yeah. I love Ask for Jill. Yeah. The Fight, you know, it's not one of my favorite Peter songs. I do like it, but I think it was one that was really easy to latch onto. You know what I mean? For a first time listener, you can really kind of grasp it at once. And some of the other ones take a couple listens and you're like, I mean, you like something about them, you know what I mean? But this song, you can really kind of get it.
Yeah.
You hear it. Okay.
And maybe you relate.
You know, so people can relate. And also you can relate by having had the same experience. Yeah. So I can believe that. I do love Ask. That's a great song too.
Right. So I'm not asking you about like a domestic thing at all, like a relationship thing, but have you ever been in a fight, like a physical fight?
Not really.
Yeah.
Not you know, like punching somebody or something like that.
Yeah.
No, I never have been.
Oh, that's good.
I'm not much of a fighter.
Yeah.
I've never been punched or I've never punched anyone.
That's good.
I felt like it probably. You know?
I've been jumped. I haven't been in a fight.
Oh my. Yeah, I was jumped in high school once, but I didn't fight back. So there was no fight involved.
Right.
Yeah. Been in an argument fight, you know, like that kind of a fight, but never a fist fight.
Kind of like Peter Holzapfel, like this kind of fight. I mean, that's
yes.
fairly common, I'm sure. I know happens with me all the time.
Yeah. Well, that's a good, it's a good song for people, maybe people that aren't familiar with them to hear that, you know, to really get into, because you can really take the meaning. It's straightforward and the meaning, but still has the cool, you know, ideas, sound and sonic kind of ideas and production ideas. And it's fun. It's kind of fun in a way, you know, even though it's about a not fun topic, it still has an air of fun about it.
Yeah, I think it's kind of delivered in a almost a humorous way.
Yeah, for sure.
Great, all right, let's move on to the next song, Espionage.
Espionage is a little weirder one from Chris.
Yep.
Espionage. Yeah. I'm not sure what that song's about either.
I don't know either, actually. I couldn't figure it out.
But I like it.
Yeah, that guitar sound is what kills me. Like that,
it's so
just
cool.
It like rattles out like that string he just hits, just like.
Yeah, it's
so
all these
weird.
little things like that. All these songs have the little things like that are just like, why did you, you know, like so cool. So yeah, this is another one. I would say it's kind of like Dynamite in a way where you're hearing sounds of things and words to make this kind of a little painting.
Yeah.
That, you know, gets partially exploded, you know.
Right. So like, to give you a little insight, because I know that you're curious about some of the things that they did on this recording. Let's see, Stamey compared it to the song 96 Tears. It was played on an ace tone organ because they liked how it would shift pitches when you bumped the power button.
Okay. That's cool. It's an ace.
Yeah, and then some of the sound effects are a plastic ruler.
Huh.
Yeah, I don't know. He didn't describe how they played it or like what they did. But I can imagine that, you know, a plastic ruler, like there's definitely a lot of like boing, like a lot of vibration. Yeah, right. That could possibly happen with it.
Well, that's very interesting. I didn't know any of that stuff. I don't have any idea how they made these records. I just love the songs, but
Yeah.
So this is good information for me.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so were there any like left of center instrumentation that you chose for the new record?
Um, Not really. I mean, I think the next to last song on the record, um, called North Main Blues, there is a bunch of synthesizer stuff on it, which wasn't really going to be there initially. It was just kind of that song was actually just going to be kind of a straightforward guitar rock song, and I ended up playing the main part of it on a Wurlitzer keyboard sound. It was a sampled one,
Mhm.
but then I got these synthesizer plugins, and some of them were ones I knew from back in the day, from the 80s and stuff. But this particular one, it was a Yamaha, this giant thing it looked like, and I didn't know it. But what I did was I wanted to see what it sounded like. So I was MIDIing the stuff, right? So I had the track I had just played, the MIDI information for the Wurlitzer track that I did, and I just popped this on. So now this synthesizer is going to play the MIDI information from the piano part that I just did, right? So
Okay.
I did that, and it didn't sound like notes really, because it was on some kind of crazy patch where does like random stuff, and so it's like where the part would be like boom, 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 like this. I'm playing chords, on the piano, but that same part played through the synthesizer, it just goes
Oh
all this
yeah.
crazy like panning from side to side in the headphones, like whoa, 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 whoa. It's like I got to use this sound. I got to use this sound. This sound is going on in this song somehow. I don't know how, but I got kind of obsessed with that.
Huh.
But nothing too weird, like on the
Yeah.
one song that you mentioned, Hourglass. We did some stuff where we used like the method of putting towels and things on the drums to make them really super dry, and just go, like the snare drum where it doesn't have any ring at all. We
Oh
did
yeah.
that kind of. And there's a couple of crazy. This song called Insta. We were working on that one day, and Jeffrey from Velvet Crush actually happened to be in the area and came by the studio in Wisconsin, which was unexpected. But John Richardson, who owns the studio and my partner in the band, had gotten somebody brought over this thing. This was like some kind of guitar effect thing that was on a stand. It was like an old one. It was from the, I guess, 80s or maybe even before. And I don't know what it did exactly, but it made these crazy sounds. It was kind of like a pedal, but it was on like a cart and it would just make the guitar sound really crazy. And so we made Jeffrey play through that or something like that. Like we plugged it in and said, play this, play with it, so,
Huh.
that was one of those things where we just happened to have the thing and had never used it, and had a guy who hadn't played with us, and we thought, this sounds perfect. Let's do this. So we used that thing some. I don't even know what it was called or what it was. I don't remember now.
Okay.
But yeah, but everything else is fairly standard stuff. Nothing as wildly creative as the dB's.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so I'm actually going to read you something. So we're going to skip down. We're going to skip some songs and skip to cycles per second.
Okay.
And now I'm actually going to resort to the book for this because I wasn't going to try to type this out because it's like
Okay.
it's some of the detail that I'm telling you about that is just like this is really in depth.
Okay.
So so let's see. So they're talking about recording cycles per second, and he says here, rather than have the band repeat the title at the end of the song, I made a slightly wonky tape loop of it, cutting off a sliver too much of the tape because they're working on real tape, obviously,
Right.
so that the sound went off the rails in a way that matched the subject matter, but it still didn't quite convey how thoughts can spiral out of control. Because he also says that this song is supposed to be about manic depression. So we put the tape at half speed and did overdubs in real time, making them come out twice as fast and up an octave on playback. Let's see.
Wow.
Now, we also added layers without listening to the other tracks at all, as Alex and I had done in Connecticut for Where the Fun Is. Once we had several tracks on this randomized oral spaghetti, we would run mixes where someone randomly pushed faders up and down, never too certain what was going to pop out of what we called party tracks in a given mix pass.
That is awesome.
Yeah, so it's just insane. Like some of the stuff that they ended up kind of doing for some of these songs. Like
that is cool. we did Mitch did a thing when we were doing Teenage Symphonies where he I don't know what the instrument was. It might have been just a mellotron or something we were using, or a Chamberlain, but he recorded stuff kind of like that on separate tracks of the multi-track tape, and then during the song would just sort of pull up randomly the faders to do this. So it's like an instrument, so you could kind of just play it, and you didn't really know necessarily what the notes, or care, what the notes were. So you just, this sound had this thing has this sound. So it wasn't quite as, it was still one sound, I think, it was like one instrument, where they're talking about doing a whole bunch of different things,
right,
which is pretty amazing. But
without even listening, like they would record stuff and like not even
total
just record.
Yeah,
like it's insane.
That's crazy. Well, I mean, a little bit like Beatles stuff that they would do, where they would have, like for the Beatles song, For the Benefit of Mr. Kite, there's like a calliope part in there. And the story is that they just sort of mix the tape. They cut the tape of it up into little pieces, and then, put it back together in whatever order it came out in, sort of thing. And then they made a loop of that, and that played in the song. So it's like, so part of it's like a real song, like the melody that you hear, but then there's bits where they goes all over the place. And,
right.
I think inspired kind of like by that kind of stuff, which is fun to do.
Yeah. I mean, like, especially working with tape, that's a very weird art form that, like, obviously almost nobody gets to do anymore. And then even still,
those guys were great at it. Like Chris, I'm sure he did a lot of this tape manipulation, and Mitch did too. I remember, when we were doing the basic tracks for Teenage Symphonies, and we were working on 2-inch tape, and we did a couple takes of a song, 2 or 3 takes of a song, and our consensus was that it sounded really good, this take, but this other take had the bridge or something. The drums are really good on it compared to the others, kind of cooler. So, and I didn't really know much about tape editing and stuff. So Mitch was like, well, why don't we just try cutting that together? I was like, oh, cool. Okay. Cut it together. Like, cut the tape. It's like, yeah, I was like, you're going to cut the tape? Like, yeah. Like, okay. Which was really normal for the, but at that point I was, not very experienced. So he, they get out the cutting block, and they find the place, find where to cut it, and they cut it together. Like, oh, cool. And Mitch is like so nonchalant about doing it. He's standing there. He's like, he's doing it and getting, and he's like eating a banana, and then he's like, puts a banana down, and then does the splice and puts it together and rolls it back. And it's hard to do, it's like hard. So you got to roll it across the head and see where to cut it. You got to find a beat, a drum beat, a kick or snare beat. And then the hard part is like knowing where you are in the song, to do it. So you roll the tape forward, back together. Yeah. So he just did it, and it was like nothing for him. So those guys, he and Chris, I think they just were like, that was their bread and butter kind of stuff that they learned, when they were learning how to do stuff. That was how you do it.
Right. And
they were really good at it. And so it was, but you can do a lot of cool manipulation that way. It just is hard. It's harder to do than like digital stuff that we partake in now.
Yeah.
You really had to work for those, doing an effect like that, like those kind of things takes a lot of time and some expertise also.
Yeah, because there's a huge margin of error that's possible there, like where you can.
And apparently, he's using the margin of error to his advantage in this particular case.
Yeah.
Where he wanted to demonstrate how the crazier sounding and cacophonous or something like that. So, but he knew that. So yeah, well, he's a genius. What can I say?
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, we're gonna skip a few songs here because there was a few things that kind of didn't really have much to work with. I wanted to skip on to Big Brown Eyes.
Oh, I love that one.
Yeah, this is a great song.
That's a great Peter Holzapfel pop song. That's just perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, he's got a couple on this side really that are like that.
Okay. Yeah.
So Big Brown Eyes, it's their first song working with Scott Litt. Who helped on the mix, according to Stamey. Chris also called it a perfect Holzapfel miniature.
Yeah.
So Scott Litt going on to be one of the premier producers and engineers in the industry even today. And then this is where I was actually going to ask you. We've already been speaking about Mitch Easter because I know that you worked with him in the past. I mean, and you've already shared with me quite a bit of stories of what it was like to work with him. So
Yeah, well, there's a Scott Litt connection too, because once we finished Teenage Symphonies, the label, or one of the labels involved, expressed an interest in trying to have a mix guy mix a couple songs, like for radio or whatever. And so the idea was Scott Litt. And so he did actually remix 3 of the songs on the record. So those 3 songs are not Mitch's mixes; they're Scott's mixes, which was the first song in the record. And I did not work with him. Rick went to that mix with him in LA, but I didn't go. But so we have a little Scott Litt tie in there.
So that was your only working experience with Scott?
Yeah, we never worked with him past that. He was just, he was just hired as a mixer to do a different mix of these, these songs to kind of, I don't know. I guess they're with those kind of thinking, it's with the record companies thinking that like the guy that did the thing, it's good for that name to be on there. The thing. I mean, I like, he did a good job on the mixes and everything. Although I don't know that they're any better than the original mixes, but they're different, and they pleased the people at the time. So it was okay. It was okay. It was a little bit of a concession that we made. But I have to say, we didn't, during the whole making of Teenage Symphonies, we didn't have any record company static or even much involvement. They left us alone. Once we set up the parameters, say we're going to do this, we're going to go to Mitch's, we're going to do it with Mitch.
Yeah.
We didn't hear from them. So that was great. It was very much artistic freedom to do whatever we felt like. So that was one little thing. We said, okay, well, that's cool. Scott Litt mixes the songs,
Yeah.
He does good stuff. So, okay.
Sure. And it's always an honor and a privilege to be able to get to work with somebody like that, even if it's in that kind of context.
Yeah. So we have his name on there, and a little time, but I did not know that he worked on the Big Brown Eyes song there.
Yeah. I think this was kind of one of his first projects, so this is kind of one of the little stepping stones that kind of got him, into his career path.
Well, it is a great, I think of this of all the songs on this record, but like what Chris said about the perfect miniature, it's sort of like each song is its own little masterpiece, I think, and this one certainly exemplifies that.
All right, well, let's move on to the next song, I'm in Love.
Oh, that's a good one. I say that about every song. That's one of Chris's, I think. That's actually fairly straightforward in lyrical meaning, I think.
Yeah, it is. Well, it's
for him,
weird.
Oddly so, for him.
Exactly, for him, because he's a little weird. Like, I've read something about him aside from in this book where, like, he was he was describing one of his other songs, like a more recent song that he was doing, that it was his trying to write a wedding song.
Oh,
so
okay.
instead of saying like I'm in love for like I will love you forever, it's like I'm gonna do my best or something like that. That's like,
yeah.
So kind of like I don't know. Like you said, it's very, very Chris Stamey. Like I don't know how else to say it. And like so, even like in this, so what he said in his book is that I'm in Love, quote, sounds like it was written while distracted, in transit, scattered. The song got lost in an overly fussy period production for which I have the lion's share of the blame. Years later, I was pleased when the band retooled it for concerts by lowering the key and eliminating some overly melodramatic arrangement twists and turns.
Oh, wow. Okay. No, I just thought it was cool. I like the production of it, but I mean, it's kind of like the I'm in love with the girl, the big star thing, the sentiment. And that's why I don't mind it, that it's so direct. And it's nice to have, I guess maybe it's not as direct as I thought if he's saying that about it, but that's a cool song. It's got a great vibe to it.
Yeah. Like the lyrics for I love what I don't understand, and I don't understand this attraction. So it's not like a straightforward love song. Like I'm in love and I love you and all this stuff.
Exactly.
It's very, very strange. But
it's direct for him.
Yeah. Yeah. In a weird way where he's being honest, being like, I don't know what the fuck this is, but this is what I assume love is, right?
Yeah. And it goes really well into the next song, which is one of the great ones on the record also.
Right. Yeah. But before I go there, the quote that I read from you from his book, where he kind of mentions retooling some of the arrangements for the song, Is there anything, is there any song that you can think of from your catalog that you either wish you could do differently or have changed?
Um, well, I change when I'm making these records, like the small scale records. I change a lot of stuff before they ever get out the door. Like I
You
go
mean,
through, if I'm not happy with it, I'll pull stuff out and change it. And so, case in point, there's a song called "Open Up Closer." Well, it's called "Open Up" on the CD. And originally that song was done. We did a session with several studio musicians at one time, playing all at once, like, because John works like this with other clients and stuff. What I call the sort of Nashville way of doing things, where you have like 4 or 5 guys all playing at the same time who have never heard the song before, so learn it on the spot. And so we
Mhm.
did that. We did the song called "Found Object" that way, and then we
Mhm.
did this called "Open Up" that way. And so "Open Up," we did it, and it had all these guys on it, and it didn't really work for him. I couldn't. It was okay, but I don't think it. I didn't think it like got realized. Like it wasn't kind of what I thought it would be or something.
Hmm.
And so, even though that was a big thing and big production, I think we also recorded it onto analog tape. Those 2 songs as well. Um, but later, I'm talking about it with John. I was like, "Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to do with it. It's changed it a little bit for me. Now I don't know what to do. I'm not sure if that's the right direction." He said, "Well," and we started talking about this band Shoes, who are our friends. They're a power pop band from the '70s who John actually plays drums for still when they do stuff and when they make a record. And they're good friends of ours. And I said, "God, it'd be really cool to like get like Shoes to be on it or something, get them to think they would, sing on it or something. It'd be really cool."
Hmm.
And so John gets his phone out instantly on the spot. We were like at, lunchtime eating a burrito or something. He's like, calls up Gary from Shoes and says, tells him what we're doing. Said, "Would you guys do this, sing on this song or play or do something on it?" And he's like, "Yeah, let me call the guys and see." And so it all came together, and then we went over there.
Hmm.
We just went over to, which was across the state. They live in Kenosha, Wisconsin. John lives in Menominee, so John lives on the west side of the state. And so we went over there, and they came, and we had a little pizza party, and they made up vocal parts and sang on this song. And Gary then did the lead guitar on it a little later on, and it made the song. Like once they started singing, I was like, "Oh, okay, I know what this is supposed to be now. This is what it's. This is right. This is the
Yeah,
right thing." So, which was, it wasn't hugely different, but the right elements added made it hugely different. You know what I mean? Like it
sure.
just had the right thing. So their voice on it, which I love the way they sound, not like anybody else, and the way they sound on it, because I like their records. And then Gary put some guitar on it that was also very much their style, and it made that song be a thing that I liked. Whereas before it was like, I don't know if it's really not really cutting it. So I don't have any problem with sort of gutting the song and fixing it, or ditching the song, but I hate to ditch the songs. So I usually try
Yeah.
and do some stuff to fix it. Um,
But so
Otherwise,
you'll
I
always
don't
do
know how
the
to go.
arrangements, changings before releasing the record. Like you'll make sure that it's like done before you put it out.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Generally, yeah. I mean, there's other things that have happened where you're limited by what you can do or what you thought of at the time, and like with Velvet Crush stuff, there's probably stuff I would do maybe a little differently, but really going back and thinking about it, it all makes sense in its own timeline.
Hmm. Sure.
And I'm actually going to have, speaking back of that, of Open Up, that song, I asked, I'm going to have Jeff Murphy from the band Shoes to do a remix of it, to like something different from my mix of it, because I mixed the record.
Hmm.
So I'm interested in doing that kind of thing, like just give the stuff to somebody and have them do something that's different from what I did, that
Oh yeah.
I can't think of. And you know what I mean? Like it makes it a whole different thing using the
Right.
bones of what you have to work with. So that I'd like to do that with more stuff, but and I hope to do that with this record, the new record.
Okay.
But otherwise, I don't think I would go back and revisit too much of this stuff. I think it's good in its own time. And maybe if somebody would cover a song, that would be cool.
Hmm.
Then it would be
Okay.
different.
Oh yeah.
Hmm.
Clearly. All right. Well, that sounds good. So then, yeah, moving on to the last song, "Moving in Your Sleep."
Beautiful. It's a
Yeah.
great session. I mean, a great record ender, and another Holz Apple classic.
Hmm.
Just the whole feel of it, you can really relate to, and it puts you in a place. I think it really
Yeah.
transports. Yeah. It's great. I don't know what to say about it, but it's
Yeah.
moving, I think. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Well, so Stamey goes on to say pretty much the same thing. He says that this is the only track from this album that he can return to with unqualified pleasure.
Wow. Really? That's saying
Yeah,
something. I know the feeling there. That's
yeah.
saying something. Yeah.
And it's not his
Yeah.
song. I mean, it's
It's beautiful.
Holzapple's song, right?
It's
So,
beautiful. Yep. Yep. It's
so
beautiful.
he goes on to say that, quote, it sounds like it was written in whispers and then immediately recorded, all while sitting in bed next to a sleeping lover.
Hmm.
So,
Great. Spot
yeah,
on.
yeah,
It really puts you like in a sort of a, a sun coming up kind of bedroom or something scene. And I always, have that kind of feel with it, kind of hazy. It's just great. I don't know.
yeah.
So evocative.
Kind of romantic, just kind of like,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
certainly. So in closing, I just like to say that I feel something similar to this statement about your new album, Hours and Others, because while I was listening to it, it seems like it's a very raw recording where there are many moments of like, you hear count-ins, like you hear room noise, like chatter and so forth. So making it seem very intimate.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I
Yeah,
like that stuff. I left some of that stuff in. I just kind of like when records have that stuff on there. When you really, some of my favorite moments of records are when, like a song's kind of fading out, on a fade out,
yeah,
and you kind of hear people and they start fucking around, or something happened, or they don't, or there's somebody talking, or I like that kind of stuff. So anytime we had a good thing like that, I tried to employ it somehow and stick it in. Oh, I will mention, if you have a second,
sure.
speaking of that exact kind of thing, on the last song is a cover song by our friend Tommy Keene,
Oh, okay.
who wrote it, right? And John played in Tommy's band for a very long time.
Yeah.
And Tommy played with Velvet Crush, and Tommy opened for Matthew Sweet more recently in the later years here before his death. And, he meant a lot to a lot of us. And I always wanted him to do this song when he was out he was opening solo acoustic for Matthew Sweet band for the last couple tours we did. And so it became a thing where sort of like every day or two, I would say, "Are you going to do Babyface, Tommy? You got to do Babyface." And it's an older song, and he's like, I'm not going to do it. And I kept saying it and saying it, in the van, I'd say it. And he'd be like, I can't really sing it. Like, I can't do it acoustic because it's kind of higher and it's hard for me to do just playing acoustic guitar. It's hard to get the voice going on, and which I totally, understand. I relate to that.
Mhm.
So, but I knew he wouldn't do it, but I kept just saying it. It became a joke. So anyway, then I had kind of plans to record it just because of that. And then he passed away, and I was like, okay, I'm recording it right now. And so I did it, and it was a real down, I was bummed out kind of thing. So I did a different version, not guitar rock kind of thing. And I sent it to John. I did it in Japan. I sent it to John in Wisconsin, and he was in the studio with these two guys, a bass player and a string player, Adam Beard and Adam Allendorf. And he said, well, maybe three of us will cut this, to your track and see what we get and then send it back to you. I said, okay, cool. So they did. And it's kind of quiet song, right? So they're out there and they're playing bass and acoustic, I think, and the drum set. And so at the end of the song, like they're letting they hit the last crash, the cymbals ringing out, you're holding out, and they hear something through the monitor, through the headphones. They're like, what is that? And so they let it go, and then they stopped the tape, they finally stopped it, and they went back and checked it out, and it was somebody's phone was sitting out in the live room on a stool or something, somebody's iPhone, and it was playing a song. Like it just sort of spontaneously started playing a song from Spotify or from something. I don't know what it was. And so the song was one of Tommy Keene's songs, one of his other songs.
Whoa.
This song called Compromise, I think is what it was, which you can hear it. If you know what it is, you can maybe barely hear it. It's on the very end of the song. I left it in there.
Yeah.
I tried to pump it up a little so you could hear it, but but they were like freaked out because it wasn't very long after he had passed away. And they all knew him. Adam played in his band the last tour that he did, this other guy that was on the session. Yeah. And so they're sitting there and it's like, it's Tommy's song. And they're like, oh my God. Like, it was like a freaking ghost moment. And it was really, really weird. So John immediately gets a hold of me and says that happened. I was like, oh my God, that's crazy.
Wow.
So
That's
yeah,
it.
I like that kind of stuff on the record. I think it really does make it. I wanted the record to seem a bit more intimate. Um, I always have a fear of kind of having something that comes off too polished, or something like that I don't like.
Hmm.
Maybe it would never, because I'm not that kind of a player and stuff. But
Yeah.
I like those little things in there. I like when you hear somebody's voice in the song. You hear like Brian Wilson going, "Yep," like counting off a part in the middle of
Yeah.
something on Pet Sounds, or those kind of things are really cool to me. So
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
thanks for noticing.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's. I mean, I don't think it's avoidable, really. I mean, I think that it's like if you're listening to it at all, like if you're really like, I mean, I typically like will listen on headphones and stuff. I try to kind of like
Yeah, sure.
fairly isolate when I'm trying to give something a listen. And so I kind of picked up on it right away, because I love that too, really. I mean, for the most part, I love like count-ins and stuff like that. It kind of like sounds like you're in the room with the people. But
Yeah,
that's a
yeah, that's
particularly
it.
like interesting story, and like that's not something that no one would know about unless you mentioned it now. Because I mean,
Yeah, I almost forgot to say it, but when you brought up that, I was trying to think of like the examples of that where I left things in. I was like, oh, that one. That was like a big one.
and that's
The other
just
thing is like
so like
the beginning of the record starts with some sounds that was that guy Adam again playing, and it was through a Leslie speaker, the rotating speaker, an organ speaker's playing guitar through that,
right.
and it was at the tail of the song, and I put it, I think, at the beginning because I liked the way that was sounding, and some of it got reversed or something. It was something weird going on, but those were all just like moments that they weren't created for that purpose. I just, I found the moment and put it. That was at the end of the song. I put it at the beginning of the song. But then again, sometimes I think it's kind of annoying that the song just doesn't start right away.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I mean, like it has its charm. And like I think like you said, like sometimes these little noises, these little just like kind of like effects that you kind of find, like they have such a like an interesting part. Like it kind of pulls you in a little bit because you're
Yeah,
kind of like don't know what to expect. Like especially if it's not like, like a simple like kind of typical instrument, guitar, drums, whatever it is that just kind of like
right.
brings it all in.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you think so. I didn't know if anybody else thought that or not. And I a lot of times I end up having stuff like that at the beginning or end of every song. So then I go back once I've kind of worked on them. I'm like, well, I don't need something on every song. Like, okay, enough's enough. You got to get the cool ones, and because
Right.
my tendency is to put a thing, leave a thing in or have it in there or whatever.
Right.
But enough. You need to temper it a little bit, I guess. So
Sure.
anyway,
Yeah.
I'm glad that it translates, because I do feel like that too, and I think sometimes you even remember that stuff about a record you hear, and you go like, oh yeah, it's got that sound, that thing happening, or they say this there, or they say a word, or what
Yeah.
are they saying there? You like a little, like surprise thing you don't know, but you end up remembering it somehow.
Right, right. And that Tommy Keene story specifically is so touching too, because I mean, obviously you guys were so close, and the you know just the fact that that happened. I mean, it really
I
sounds
just
like he
wonder.
was
I don't even
speaking
know
to
how
you
to
guys.
explain. Yeah, I don't know how to explain how it happened. I mean, could have been triggered by the fact that we were playing, but the way we were playing the song was so not like the original version of that song. Like
Right.
if you did a Shazam of it, I don't know if it would,
Yeah.
know that it was
You know.
that song. I don't know how that works, but like the
Right.
chords are the same stuff, but Tommy's version of it is like a rock song, and mine
Yeah.
is not. So I don't know how
Well, it
that.
sounds funny that it sounds funny to me because look, I don't know those songs, right? But you just told me that the song that was playing was his song called Compromise.
I think it was one called Compromise. Yeah.
So it was like him speaking to you, saying, "You're covering my song. I'm making this compromise with you to allow you to do this."
That could be.
It could be,
Fine.
man.
I
It's
get that.
fucking weird. It's so weird.
And then I found out later that Tommy's brother, who is a close friend of ours too, it's kind of this guy in charge of his music and stuff. And so I asked him if it was okay, that I said, I got this version of Tommy's song. I want to send it to you, and I want to know if it's okay. I want to put it on our record. And he said, yeah, I love it. And actually, that's the first song that my late wife and I, danced to at our wedding, was that song of Tommy's. So it
Oh
had like
wow.
emotion. I didn't know about any of that, so I didn't know had kind of meaning for other members of the family. But so I thought, he said, yeah, it would be great to have it on the record. So I said, okay, awesome.
Wow. That's great, man. Wow, that's it's so powerful, so doing this stuff, making music and kind of reaching people close to you, people that you don't know, whatever it is
And
that
I
really.
think it's easy to lose sight of it too because you get so involved in the making of it and things. Like you hope that it has some kind of a transcendent quality or some impact on somebody, but you don't. I'm talking to you and you tell me what you think about it, so that's one way to know.
Mhm.
Um, but otherwise, you kind of are so immersed in the process of trying to do it or get it out or promote it or do something with it that um, you maybe don't. The artist maybe doesn't always uh,
You're
have that
oblivious to it.
have
Like, I
that
mean,
vision of it. Yeah. I
you
mean,
don't
at
get
a
the
show,
feedback. Yeah,
definitely, a show you play a song, people say, "Oh, I love that song." But like
sure.
as far as the recording itself, you don't necessarily get it's one-sided. It's one way. It's a one-way trip kind of.
Right.
So it's actually fun to talk to people about that stuff.
Yeah, man.
Like
Well,
yourself.
yeah. Well, I thank you for taking the time and talking to me about it. I really appreciate it,
Hey, I
man. It's
appreciate it. I'm
been
sorry, I hope we didn't go over time. I
no.
started launched right into my Ivan thing because I was so happy to hear Ivan on
Oh,
the
that's
other
all right,
podcast.
man. No worries, man. No, it's just an honor to speak with you, man. I really do and enjoy this.
Well, thank you. And you're kind of making me miss some Providence things. I haven't been there
Yeah.
for quite a while.
Well, I mean, what's the plan with the small square? I mean, are you planning on doing any touring at all?
There's nothing afoot right now. I don't know. Actually, I don't know. I'd like to get something going, but I don't have anything on the books at the moment. I just got done doing the Velvet Crush stuff, and I don't know where I'm at with it actually.
Okay.
So it's a definite don't know.
All right.
But yeah,
Well,
sure, we would like to do some stuff. We would definitely like to do some shows and get that
yeah.
happening.
Well, so
Anyway,
the
thanks for your help spreading the word. I appreciate it, James.
of course. So I mean, but the album is out now, and the
Yep.
CDs have sold out. It looks like so.
There's
As
some
long
still available, maybe at the label farmtolabelrecords.com.
okay.
There's some there. The Bandcamp is temporarily out of CDs. Probably will have some more at some point soon, but I don't have them right now. I was just sending those to international destinations mostly. So if you want a CD in the States, go to Farm to Label Records and they should be able to hook you up. Otherwise, it's streaming everywhere and downloadable and all that kind of stuff.
Right. Okay. Great,
Thanks
man.
very much. Bye
No
bye.
problem, man. Have a good one.